Hello, I'm Rupert Soskin.
And I'm Michael Bott. Welcome to the Prehistory Guys podcast for April 2021.
Yep, this month we're looking at discoveries from the Middle East, China, Poland, right across to North America, and we're getting into discussing the Bronze Age Argar culture from the Iberian Peninsula.
We do get about a bit, don't we?
We do.
And, of course, all the regular items that make these podcasts complete. We're pushing back a boundary, naming our new Stonehead of the month, and rounding off the show with something on the whimsical side of archaeology. But before we begin, listen, something important. As many of our fans have demanded, we have, at last, now started work on creating a sequel to our acclaimed film, Standing with Stones. Obviously, this is a massive project, and your help in achieving this next goal would be hugely appreciated.
We don't know how long it's going to take us to the pre-production stages. Lots of research still to be done, lots of planning still to be done. So we're a while away from cameras rolling. But
yes, and anything can happen, because you probably notice if you're watching this on video, I've started my Standing with Stones beard. So, where's this going to take us?
Well, I don't know. Nanook of the North will reappear.
I was thinking more Shackleton myself.
Of course you were. Yes. Yes, all right, we'll stick with Shackleton. You've still got that brown coat, haven't you?
Yeah. Anyway, the point is, Standing with Stones 2 is a go. Lord knows how long it'll take us, but with your help, we will get there sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Take a look over at patreon.com/The Prehistory Guys to find out how you can help us do that and get access to loads more stuff as well.
Indeed.
Enough of that.
Indeed.
Enough said. So, first things first, what is it that is pushing back a boundary for us this month, Rupert?
Well, this is a fabulous discovery from a team of archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority. It's in the Murabat Cave, I think that's the right pronunciation, which is close to the Dead Sea, about 20 miles southeast of Jerusalem. The team have uncovered what is believed to be the oldest hand-woven basket ever discovered. It's a staggering 10,500 years old.
That's ridiculous.
It's amazing, isn't it? And they actually sampled a number of different parts of the basket to make sure that the dating was correct. It's got a woven lid as well. Sadly, it was empty, apart from a bit of soil that had worked its way in over the millennia. The amazing thing is that despite its age, the level of preservation it's just almost perfect. It genuinely looks as if you could still use it. They haven't yet identified the exact type of plant fibres it's made from, but analysis is being carried out to see if they can pin that down, and also get some ideas as to what had been stored or carried inside it. Now, another lovely detail is that they have been able to tell that it was woven by more than one individual, one of whom was left-handed.
Oh, that's ridiculous. From 10,500 years ago. I mean, and it has to be said. I mean, the photographs of it, they look astonishing.
Do you know, even my laundry basket looks more tired than this.
Well, your laundry basket. Sorry, run that by us again.
My laundry basket. Do you not have a laundry basket? What?
Well, not my laundry basket. No. But I mean, hats off to you. Absolutely. I'm sure Julie is thrilled that you have a laundry basket. Rupert Soskin, the old washerwoman of
the old
Renly Band.
You can call me what you like.
I thought it's a bit of a reach. They sort of think it sounds like they're complaining they didn't find anything inside the basket. When they've got the basket for 10,500 years old. So disappointed there isn't anything inside. What?
Yes, I know. It is extraordinary, though. I mean, I wonder what it was. It'll be interesting to see what they come out with. In fact, do you know what? There's a thought, he said, going off on one. Yes. We're interviewing Harry Robson tomorrow. That is very much the sort of thing that Harry Robson would be able to do. Scrape the insides of that and tell you what was in it. Anyway, more of that another time.
I don't know how you
Anyway,
scrape a basket without it falling to pieces.
Exactly.
10,000-year-old.
Anyway, there you are,
basket
folks. New
yeah,
boundary.
yeah.
The oldest known woven basket, 10,500 years old. Amazing.
Spot on. And so to the news.
And so to the news.
Shall I do the news? Okay, first up today is going back even further than your basket.
Oh, really?
So there, yes. In fact, this could have been another boundary-pushing piece. We're still in the Middle East, this time in Jordan at an archaeological site called Hareni 4. That's the number 4, in case you were wondering. And a team led by archaeologists Lisa Mayer of the University of California and Danielle MacDonald of the University of Tulsa have just published their findings on a 20,000-year-old burial of a woman found cremated inside a hut. Now, it seems reasonable to suppose that this was her own house and that she was cremated within it, but the remarkable thing here is that burials and cremations within buildings was a funerary practice thought to have originated around 10,000 years ago. This discovery blows that dating out of the water, if that's not a rather poor analogy for something that we've found in the desert. But anyway, so how can we be sure that it wasn't an accidental fire and she just got trapped inside? Well, firstly, the woman was in a typical funerary position, laid on her side with her knees flexed, and secondly, the walls collapsed inwards during the burning, and all the burnt soil and charcoal remains are in a very neat pattern around the edges of the walls, so it was clearly a managed fire. Carbon-14 analysis of the floor where she lay has dated the burial to 19,200 years old. That's almost twice the previously accepted age for burials associated with buildings. And just one little extra, dating also revealed that the settlement around this building continued to be occupied until around 18,600 years ago. So that's a significantly long period of time for a permanent occupation, so much earlier than farming practices are thought to have arisen. Clearly, this must have been a very nice place to live.
It must have been, mustn't it?
Otherwise, why would you stick around?
Yes, Fertile Crescent and all that.
Into
yes.
that very grey area between hunting, gathering or whatever and farming, where we assume people have been moving around, but not necessarily so, according to this.
I think it's quite possible that we've got all our ideas around that a little bit twisted. I mean, well, why would people, if you find somewhere nice, I think it's probably quite natural to want to settle down somewhere, isn't it? You can still go out and gather whatever from around and about, but yeah.
It's probably got something to do with climate, as well.
Indeed, and it must have been
seasons
really
would tend to force
there.
people to move, as a hunter-gatherer. But if the temperature and climate is moderate, it doesn't force you to move around quite so much.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
also depends whether you're chasing animals all over the place as well.
That's true too.
That's the only other thing that would make you move about, wouldn't it?
That is true too. Well, there's clearly a lot more to be learnt from that site. But okay, well, next piece. This research is from Poland, and it's very much work in progress, so there's not too much to say about it right now. But archaeologists have discovered one of the largest megalithic cemeteries ever found in Poland. The site was spotted by researcher Jan Bulas when he was looking through satellite imagery around the area of Sanxindui in southeast Poland. He spotted what looked like a rectangular enclosure surrounded by a ditch, which clearly warranted further investigation. So he took a trip out to the location with his colleague, archaeologist Marcin Przybilla, I think is the correct pronunciation of that.
Przybilla.
It's lots of Z's
Try that.
and B's and Przybilla. That'll do. Where they carried out a magnetometry survey. Now, aside from establishing the overall layout of the site, they've found a number of tombs, which at the moment they are estimating to be around 5,500 years old. Now, I don't know what they're basing that on. I'm guessing typology, because as I understand it, no official dating has yet been carried out. Another fascinating feature is that the walls, which are about 50 metres long, were palisaded with timber posts, and they think that the site included some sort of chapel. Again, I don't know what they're basing that on, but either way, it's an exciting discovery and very much a watch this space piece. We'll bring you more information as it becomes available.
Yes, indeed. It's funny, we don't report very much on, fresh megalithic sites on the continent, over the other side of the North Sea, or, in Europe. Mind you, I suppose we're so concentrated on where we live in our predilection for our own barrows and
it's true, but it's interesting, isn't it? If if you're looking at it from that perspective, that we report on archaeology from all over the world. And it's not that often that you come up with megalithic stuff.
Yeah.
They're not hugely common for some reason. Because clearly, megaliths do exist over a massive amount of the world. Whoops, microphone falling over. So it is interesting. But there you are. Megalithic cemetery in Poland.
Excellent. We shall look forward to further news. Over to China now, though, and the site of Sanxindui. I think I've got that right, too. Sanxindui in Sichuan province, which is thought to be of the Shu civilization. The 3,000-year-old site was discovered back in 1929 when a farmer dug up some jade artefacts while he was repairing a drainage ditch. Since then, tens of thousands of items have been found in numerous pits as excavations have continued across the site. Archaeologists are calling them sacrificial pits because many of the artefacts were burnt before being buried, and this discovery of 6 new pits is quite special. Archaeologists, led by Fei Tang, head of the excavation team and chief of the Sichuan Provincial Cultural Relics and Archaeological Research Institute.
Well done.
Thank you, I pat myself on the back, have unearthed a huge treasure trove of artefacts, mostly made from gold, bronze, ivory and jade. The team have excavated over 500 items from the rectangular pits, one of the most noteworthy being a piece of a gold face mask. The piece weighs over half a pound, and they estimate that when whole it would have weighed over a pound, making it one of the heaviest gold masks ever found in China from that period. Some of the bronze items are really quite beautiful, urns engraved with birds and animals, etc., showing fantastic craftsmanship. They've also found 2 different types of silk at the site, some amongst the burnt offerings and some wrapped around bronze items, and they think this might suggest that Sanxindui was an important site for the origin of silk in China.
Amazing. Yeah, really is wonderful stuff. Anyway,
well, yes, it's from a stylistic point of view as well.
Oh,
all the stuff is
they're just so beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they don't look that old at all, do they? They're just so sophisticated. Lovely stuff.
Really striking.
Well, okay, I'm taking us all the way across to North America now and into the deep and chilly waters of Lake Huron on the Alpena Amberley Ridge between northeast Michigan and Ontario. A research team headed by Professor John O'Shea from the University of Michigan have found dozens of 9,000-year-old artefacts and stone structures. Basically, we're looking at probably the most important prehistoric caribou or ungulate trap ever found in or around the Great Lakes. It seems incredible, but 9,000 years ago, water levels of the Great Lakes were up to 100 metres lower than they are today.
100 metres?
100
is
metres.
ridiculous.
It doesn't sound possible, but...
Think about that for a moment.
The thing is, the Alpena Amberley Ridge, where these artefacts have been found, was at the time a dry, narrow land corridor extending from northern Michigan to south-central Ontario. The whole area was flooded quite rapidly after about 8,000 years ago, and everything has been preserved under the icy waters. Now, charcoal recovered from the middle of a circle of stones yielded a date of 9,020 before present.
That's accurate, isn't it?
It's very accurate, yes. So that's obviously the calibrated dates, so, very accurate. Other structures on the ridge range from simple, small V-shaped hunting blinds to more complex features with stone drive lanes and multiple hunting blinds. Also, using remote sensing, they've found 2 long converging stone lines that narrow to a gap of about 400 metres just below a group of hunting blinds. So something that's particularly exciting for us about this discovery is that these forms of animal traps are pretty much identical to the desert kites in the Middle East and the prehistoric Saiga traps over in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan.
This is really fascinating stuff and right up our street, isn't it? But I mean, many folks listening or watching won't have really come across this aspect of early hunting. You know, I mean, it's a sort of part of the hunting practice that's extended right, through almost up to the present day. This thing of trapping ungulates and other kinds of wild animals, just using simple banks and ditches in the landscape to funnel animals to where they can be. Should we say executed? Would that be or at least gathered into a
yes, yes,
a controllable into a controllable space?
Dispatched.
And, dispatched, should we say executed? What am I like? Yeah.
It's an interesting thing in the minds of ungulates. The fact that they will follow a line. You put a line of stones down, and they'll follow it. Make a ditch, they'll follow it. It's quite strange.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just trying to put the picture in. We've mentioned the words ungulate trap and kite and all that kind of thing, but for many people, an image will not come to mind. That's what I'm trying to say. Of what we're talking about. We're talking about very, very large structures in the landscape that are designed to entrap these animals.
Yes. Yes, yeah. I mean, ditches and banks and rows of stones. It's some of them going for miles.
That was my point.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary amount of effort on the part of the hunters themselves.
Yeah.
The fact that they would build these things so far across the landscape because they know that that's on the migration route of the animals.
Yeah.
So the animals will follow those lines. Yeah, it's very clever.
And I think these things are far more common than people think, perhaps. And
Indeed.
but it's while it makes the news for us, but that in fact about wraps up the news.
It does wrap up the news. Yes. Yes. Shall we move on?
Yes, we've done particularly well today, I think. But yes, we shall move on now. Let's talk about something else for a bit.
Let's talk about something else. Yeah.
So you'll have seen from the title of the show that the main talking point we're about to embark on is Argar Culture, or Argaric Culture. It's also known by, if you do a search on Google, which until almost a matter of days or weeks ago was completely unknown to us, wasn't it, Rupert?
It's one of those shocking things, actually, that something came up in the news that we reported on. It was an Argaric burial at El Almaloya, where it was a double burial of a man and a woman, and the woman was buried with all these silver artifacts. So it was a very impressive burial, and prior to that, we hadn't heard about the Argaric culture at all. And that's just become such a shock to us, because finding out that pretty much all the information there is to be found is in Spanish, but this culture have been known about for 100 and however many years. I mean, a long time. And it just goes to show, well, how much other stuff is there out there, without wanting to digress too much, but how much stuff is there out there that just because it's not written in your own language, you remain completely ignorant of it. So we were quite shocked about that, and we thought that if so much stuff is known about the Argaric culture that just hasn't been written about very much in English, that we should have a look. So that's what we're doing right here now.
Yeah, that's what we did, and pretty much had our socks blown off, really, haven't we? How shall we frame this? Let's try and paint a very broad picture to begin with,
yes,
so we know where we are, what time we are.
Eastern Spain, in Andalusia, Murcia, so right down in the southeast. And
on the Mediterranean coast.
On the Mediterranean.
That's important. Yeah.
But we're talking about, so they're a Bronze Age culture, and the period of the height of their power. So they went from, what was it, 2200 BC to 1500 BC, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was 700 and something years roughly.
And the speculation in the news around, that's how we came across it, this news of, and we dubbed her the Silver Queen for our purposes, but I mean, that was pretty much in line with the kind of stuff that had been coming out in the media, because what was special, it was a double burial, a man and a woman, but she was adorned with these particular, wonderful silver artifacts and other stuff that she'd been buried with, and the speculation was that she was that this Algaric culture was ruled by women, perhaps more than men, and that was a thing that kind of made it newsworthy, and that was extrapolated from this particular one burial, and it has to be said from other burials within the culture, both of adults and of children. So it was this special quality of the females being more revered in death, shall we say, than their male counterparts. That was the speculation.
Yeah, it's a curious thing, isn't it, that even in infant burials or child burials, that girls were buried with significant artifacts from the age of about 6. Yeah. But that doesn't apply to boys. That boys didn't get the same sort of burial treatment until they were at least 12 years old. So clearly there was something going on with the importance of women for this culture. But there's, other than stating that as fact, it's difficult to add anything to that, isn't it? Really, we don't know how they were.
But what we went on to find is that really isn't the significant thing about this culture. This isn't just an other Bronze Age culture that maybe have had a different cultural bent as far as gender is concerned. What we've gone on to find out is that archaeologists believe that this was the first prehistoric state in Western Europe. Sure, we've had states in Mesopotamia, Sumer, and in Egypt going on before now, but this was the first established state in Western Europe. And that is the thing that needs to be talked about, and its significance sort of brought out, I think, because it's been so much under the radar that it came and went and didn't leave a mark until these artifacts started to be dug up at the end of the 19th century. I think the important thing is that previous states, going right back into Mesopotamia, there was some literature that came down from those times. I mean, they were already, writing stuff down 3000 BC, and of course in Egypt. But here, although it's been interpreted as a state and as a almost like a civilization, there is no language that has been passed down from it, so therefore it's disappeared. And the next sort of European, if you like, civilization, we get Mycenae and Greek, and we go on from there. But this is a sort of missing gap.
It is a missing
down
gap
there on the southeast coast of Iberia.
And there are so many intriguing aspects to this. The fact that it is known that the Argar culture traded throughout the Mediterranean, apparently traded quite extensively. And that, you have to ask the question again, well, if they traded extensively throughout the Mediterranean, and we know that other people trading throughout the Mediterranean traded much further afield than that, then it's joining dots, that how far did this influence extend, and yet we have no real knowledge of them because they didn't have the written word.
Yeah.
It's a really curious part of history. They're saying that the state, to use that term, was the size of Belgium.
Yes.
That really is quite extensive. For that period in time. Now, the interesting thing, I think, do you know what? I keep saying that. There are so many. An interesting thing here is that all their main settlements, they're hilltop settlements.
Yeah.
It's
a very rugged landscape. I mean, it's not like Belgium. It's maybe the size of Belgium.
But isn't it interesting that even though they didn't all look fortified, they were all in positions where you would have fortifications. So they clearly felt that they needed to be in hilltop positions.
Yeah.
As far as we're aware, they're not found, unless the lowland sites have long since disappeared. But everything remaining of them it's all hilltop, isn't it, as far as I've read?
Yeah. You have to forgive us a bit because we're a bit babes in the wood about this. I mean, it's like we've stumbled through a door into an unknown territory, and it's a territory, of course, where archaeologists have been digging and examining and interpreting for a long time. So we've just stumbled through this door, and we're trying to pick up the pieces and give them to you as we find them, because we think it's really important. So we've picked up bits of stuff as we go along, but there's some really important aspects, and you just touched on one. The fact that these are, hilltop, and some of them do look like forts.
Yes.
What has been gleaned from the organisation of some of these settlements, and some of these are not settlements per se, but it seems that the different aspects of the society, the production of, for example, silver, which is one of the main things seems to have come out of this, and they seem to have been trading, was the silver. One kind of presupposes that that's where their power, if we're talking about this elite, where they got their power from, was the fact that they had control of the production of this sort of silver production line, if you like. And
that in itself is interesting, isn't it? Because we don't hear very much at all about silver in the Bronze Age.
That's right.
We do hear about gold artifacts, and we hear about bronze and copper and tin and what have you, but who do you hear talking about silver?
Yeah.
It's
But one of these hilltop sites seems to be dedicated to the production of silver. They were bringing silver for quite a way away in the form of ingots.
Was it 200 miles? The longest one?
Yeah.
That they were bringing silver ore from 200 miles away to turn into artifacts here. So, and what's more, when they've got it back to base, as it were, they have to carry it up the hill.
Up the hill, yeah. So this hilltop collection of workshops that, I kid you not, it looks like a Bond villain's evil lair.
It really does.
On the top of a mountain. If you're watching this on video, hopefully I'll be able to get a picture to reinforce that. But the picture is of an association of hilltop settlements, and a lot of which are fortified. I mean, really heavily fortified. These are big castle-like. Well, some of them look like they've come out of the medieval period rather than
they really
in
do,
terms of
don't they? It's quite an extraordinary thing. But aspects to this though, because obviously, I mean, as Michael just said, we've burst through this door and we're running around like kids in a sweet shop. Don't quite know which way to turn, which thing to pick up and taste. But it's going back to this aspect of the importance of women. Something that's quite curious is that all the prominent burials of women are related to the burial of an elite male, but the women always tend to have more grave goods. It's elite males always buried with a sword, whereas the women are buried with all this jewellery and and just all sorts of silver artifacts, silver coils, for braiding the hair, and it's a curious thing. Something interesting with the burials is that double burials were not uncommon, but it always seemed to be the case that the people buried together did not live. They weren't contemporary, so they would bury somebody and then they would reopen the grave to bury the second burial. They would reopen the grave after the event, which is why the Silver Queen, the piece that we did for that, one of the things that made that so unusual was that they found a baby in a separate burial that had clearly belonged to this couple. So it was the first time they'd actually found a dual burial where the couple had actually lived contemporarily. So there's a lot of research and reading still to be done.
Painting that picture a little bit further, this burial that we're talking about is particular for a reason I'll go over in a moment, but it's not unusual. It's quite representative in kind of style of the kind of burials that are found throughout the culture, for want of a better word. And a lot of these burials are intramural, i.e. they're within
walls,
the settlement bounds, if not, actually inside, under the floors of buildings, that kind of thing. We're not talking about separate outside the walls burial mounds. This kind of burial is taking very much inside the settlement walls. And I'll go back now to this principal burial that we've been talking about. The reason it's deemed important is because of this one was found under the floors of what is reckoned to be a meeting place, a meeting room, a place where decisions are being made, and it is the largest room, I think, within the whole of Algaric culture, taking in all the settlements. But this one particular settlement, Lal Maloya, has this large room amongst all the others, which seems to have no domestic waste, no indication whatsoever of having been lived in, and it has all the elements that would suggest that it was a gathering place, a meeting room, with hierarchical indications of a hierarchical structure, because you've got benches, a stone bench along one wall, and then a higher bench, and then a kind of dais for somebody extra important. All this within the largest room, and this burial is under the end of one of the benches in this room, in a large ceramic, very large ceramic jar. Yes. So these people, if there was an elite, they certainly belonged in it.
Yes, but there were a number of burials in that room. This was just the most significant one. in there. So clearly it was an important place within the settlement. Or do we call it a city? What do we call it?
City would make it too grand, but I
City
suppose
would
in
make
those
it too
terms...
grand. But
yeah.
yes, it's...
But in terms of, the contemporary importance of the place, it's not too much of a reach, because...
should we talk about...
Citadel. We could call it a citadel.
Let's call it a
certainly.
citadel. Yes, that's better. I like that, yes. Should we talk about the fact that other than the fact that they made jewellery, that these women wore jewellery of some description, that there's no other art or expression of individual thinking to be found anywhere within Argaric culture?
That's right. I mean, the jewellery, whatever in itself may be beautiful, but it is not... there's no decoration to it.
No.
I think this comes out more strongly when we look at the pottery, because there's a heck of a lot of very well preserved pottery from Argaric culture, and in and of itself, the pottery is beautiful and phenomenal to look at, but not a trace of decoration in it. And you have to remember this culture was born out of this Iberian version of the beaker culture, in which pots were certainly decorated, but this not a trace.
It's interesting, isn't it? Very elegant shapes. So.
And perhaps people were finding ways of expressing themselves subtly through the beauty of the pottery itself. I don't know.
The carinated pots, very graceful curves, but again, elegant and functional as opposed to decorated. Even one of the most significant things in the whole of this burial, this particular burial, was that the woman was wearing a diadem, a silver diadem. And even that, you think, so essentially a tiara sort of thing with a lozenge going down her forehead towards the bridge of her nose. Now, normally you would imagine that sort of tiara type adornment to be elegantly, designed in some way, but this is purely, it's a silver disc lozenge coming down completely flat, no engraving or anything on it. It's just completely plain. Which is,
if I can be facetious for a moment, it's the first minimalist culture in prehistory.
Yeah.
It seems that way. But let's speak to that for a moment, because this is getting to the heart of the matter, that archaeologists have interpreted all the evidence comes together to provide this interpretation. And that is, given that we've got fortified settlements on hilltops, that we've got the first evidence in a prehistoric settlement in Western Europe of a conference hall, a place of politics, a place where maybe things are decided, that kind of thing. It really speaks to a very strong hierarchy where things are highly organized. That's the point. The fact that places are delineated for specific purposes speaks to an elite that are directing how things go, that they're controlling, at least of the silver, the mining production and trade of this stuff, because the elements of it are divided up and delineated, and that's how you get, almost like fortified workshops on top of a hill specifically for that purpose. And the interpretation of this is that not only is it hierarchical, yes, we expect that, but there's an extreme gap between this controlling ruling class and the masses. that is what archaeologists seem to be taking away mostly from this. And another piece of evidence that supports this is that there seems to have been a specialized militia.
Yes. Yes. And this is quite dark, isn't it? It's really quite dark because the all the military might seems to have been for internal use, keeping the people under control, because there is no evidence at any of the sites. There is no evidence of fighting with outsiders or outside forces breaking in. This is all internal. That is quite dark. I think it was, you said the other day, didn't you, Mike? It was the first totalitarian state.
Well, it wasn't me that said it. It was first mentioned by the guy that was in charge of the pottery of the pottery for these sites. I think is because of the lack of art. It seems that was under control as well. Like, you're not allowed to express yourself. The implication is. But we know about we kind of know about the militia thing because an unusual weapon is quite prominent from within these city walls, and that is the halberd.
Yes, the halberd, and it's
halberd. I think we're going straight forward to the medieval again. But
absolutely, I'm not sure if this is the earliest known instances of halberds, but certainly in the quantities that they have been found in the sites.
Yeah,
it is quite remarkable that the people were buried. Some of the men were buried with halberds and daggers, and that implied a method of fighting. Is not the right word here. But basically,
enforcement, should we say?
Yes, okay, enforcement. Well done. That's a good word to use in this instance. That a halberd used in conjunction with a knife it's a very quick way of controlling somebody. A distraction with a blade over your head while you get stabbed in the gut, kind of thing, is it's a very effective way of keeping people under control. And as I said, all internal.
I hope we're putting together, a very odd picture. This is, you're understanding why we wanted to pursue this, because this is for Western Europe at this time. This is a very peculiar kind of arrangement. We haven't heard of this kind of thing where we've got a totalitarian state with its own militia and its internally organised control of economics and how things are done. And the other element that contributes to this impression of a very top-heavy community in which the masses are exploited by an elite is the fact that there's a very high infant mortality rate.
Yes. In fact, overall, infants account for something like 80% of the dead.
Yeah.
Which again, that is very, very, very dark. Why so many dead children? Why was it that just they were surplus to requirements? That you can think of all sorts of reasons, but children right away from newborn. They account for about 80% of the total burials.
Yeah. So, and we've been talking about this now for quite a bit. And as I say, I apologise. We're babes in the wood. We're sort of bashing from pillar to post, trying to collectively describe, gathering all the evidence that we know to try to paint this picture. But the final part of this picture is the fact that Argar Culture came to a very sudden end round about
it's bordering on overnight.
Well, yes. And the evidence for that is within 85% of these hilltop settlements, there is a layer of ash. There's evidence of burning happening all at the same time. Interestingly, there's no evidence whatsoever of an invasion from another culture, another people. There's no evidence whatsoever. The implication is that this was an internal revolution that brought Argar culture to its knees at the end.
Yes, keep people down long enough.
That's right. Was it the case that the people rose up, that they'd had enough, that they'd come to the end of their tether, that, you know...
Yeah. Because, the thing that really illustrates that this was not an invasion from outside, that there was no fighting with external forces, is that from all the remains that have been excavated, there is nothing that stylistically belongs anywhere else. So, you know, if this was an invading force, you would have a different style of dagger that would be found in the thing, or a broken blade. You know, there'd be something that belonged to a different group or different culture. But there's nothing at all. The remains of every single thing that have been found relate to within Argaric culture. It's just an amazing story. It's like you keep saying, you've said it a few times over the last couple of months, that just waiting for somebody to write the novel. Yes. It's another one of those.
This whole thing is so ripe for somebody to pull this all together. It must be a fascinating story, and I hope, you know, in the time that Rupert and I have been talking about it, that we've given you some inkling of some fascination, or piqued your interest, that you'll dig a bit deeper. Because there are so many more details, so many more nuances to dig out of this whole thing than we're able to provide here. So I hope we've done that job, at least of piquing your interest. If not, I'm sure we haven't, done the subject full justice. But we thought it was important to talk about it.
Yes, lots more reading to do, and you can find a few articles in English, but any of the serious work is all in Spanish. All the science papers are in Spanish. I think I found one that had been translated, but yeah. So we still feel that there's something important here in terms of being able to join dots with other Bronze Age cultures. There's something so interesting about the fact that this was such a sophisticated culture who were trading more widely, that we must be able to find links. So watch this space, I suppose. Once again, watch this space.
All right, with that, I think we shall move on.
Let us do that thing.
I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, that was amazing. Who knew we knew so much or so little, or what have you?
Indeed.
Oh, so many places to go with that. Anyway, nevertheless, we've made it to this time in the show where it is time to reveal whoever it is who is our Stonehead of the Month. Stonehead of the Month. Stonehead of the Month.
Well, do you know what? It's shameful, really. This is beyond overdue.
Yes, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yes. This person should probably have been declared a Stonehead of the Month, maybe even years ago.
You sure he wasn't?
I'm quite sure he wasn't. I have the list. And I'm pretty sure he knows he wasn't. The Stonehead of the Month this month, someone very important to us. In fact, one of our admins, particularly in the Standing with Stones Facebook community, and he's just all-round rock and right-hand man, and just very, very important to us. We are talking about Mr. David Potter, lover of figures. But let's not go there.
No, let's not go there. We'll have to explain what a fugu is.
Yeah, we would.
Or how you should pronounce it.
And that would never do.
And David, I think we'll have a word about that as well. Yes.
So, David, I can only say that we hope that this was in some way worth waiting for, and we will buy you a pint at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah, I think you've already got a prehistory guy's badge, haven't you?
He has got a prehistory guy's badge, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what else we could possibly reward him with.
Yes. Anyway,
but it's one of those things, guys. I mean, David has been part of that, the cult, and a leader, if not of the cult following that had us continue in the intervening years after Standing with Stones was completed. I don't know, David's always been a stalwart member of that small group of people on Facebook that were always inquiring what we were up to, and just keeping our minds reminding us that we made this film once upon a time.
It all seems so very long ago.
Nothing more to say there, Mr. Soskin?
Well, I'd already done an out, and you carried on going. So we can
you left me. I've hung myself out to dry there,
yes,
have I?
Indeed. I shall watch you flap in the breeze.
All right. Well, I will. Once more, a hearty cheer for Mr. David Potter.
Mr. David Potter. We love you, David.
Stonehead of the Month, April 2021. Anyway, that brings us to racing towards the end of the show. And what are you going to wind up with this time, Mr. Soskin? You're bringing us more whimsy.
Do you know what's the whimsy out? I love this.
Yes.
It really made me smile. You remember King Alfred going down in history as the man who burnt the cakes?
Indeed. I think it's what the sort of story they used to use on us in school to try and make history interesting.
Indeed, they did, yes. Well, I think he got bad press.
Who was it with the spider, though? Who was it with the spider?
That was Robert the Bruce.
Oh, that was Robert the Bruce. See, that's the other thing that, spiders and cakes.
Yes,
spiders,
if at first
cakes,
you don't
and
succeed, try again. Yes.
Yes.
Well, this is not King Alfred burning the cakes. Okay. This further than that, and whoever made this gastronomic cock-up has been lucky to remain anonymous. Archaeologists in Denmark unearthed a completely undamaged Bronze Age clay pot in the wetlands north of Silkeborg. And inside they found a strange-looking cindery substance. So naturally they were quite keen to find out what it was. Well, guess what the analysis revealed?
The suspense is killing me.
It was in fact burnt cheese, the oldest known cooking fail in the world.
What would John Turode say?
Oh dear, yes.
It's amazing that the pot survived intact.
It is amazing. It is amazing. And actually, it gets funnier. The analysis revealed a type of acid that doesn't come from normal cow's milk. They think it came from the cow's stomach, where bacteria create this kind of carbon fatty acids. So they think this might have been somebody experimenting in the kitchen and accidentally making something that A, stank to high heaven, and B, was filling the place with acrid smoke, so they just took the whole damn thing and dumped it outside. Leaving us as the lucky ones to be able to talk about somebody else having a bad day 3,000 years ago.
That's marvellous, isn't it? You know, it always goes horribly wrong if people start experimenting on MasterChef, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, let's face it, making cheese with stomach's contents... just whoever thought that was going to be a good idea? Well, it's not whatnot.
No, indeed. And on that note, I hope you enjoyed the show, folks. But it is time to say goodbye until the next time we see you. Thank you so much for listening, so much for your support, if you're doing that thing. That's about it from me.
And likewise, goodbye from me. See you next time.
Cheers, folks. Bye-bye. Bye.